Loyalty. If you love them well, they will be loyal. And it doesn't matter what. It's incredible. Like you could hurt, I've come across animals that have been abused or have been neglected, abandoned, all sorts of things. But after being extended love, they become the most loyal to you, and they reciprocate that love with zero conditions, even though that's not what they experienced before, even though they have every reason not to trust or love again, they still choose to do that. And so I feel like it's just an extension of God's character, period. If you look at everything in creation, you will find God's character. Hey, what's going on? So my name is Sherrie. Just a girl, grew up in Florida, moved to San Antonio about 7 years ago or so. My whole family moved over here, and I was kind of the last one to trek along, but I'm here. I remember the first time I saw Pastor Courtney and I met Pastor Courtney was at a church that I was visiting at the time, trying to find a church home here. And I just remember him speaking life and purpose into me without even really knowing everything about me or who I was in my entirety. He knew that there was a purpose on my life and that someone needed to speak into it because it had been dormant for so long. So that was the very first time that I had someone, if you will, kind of become a father figure in that area for me. I knew that he was a worship director in another state for the same church, but in another state. Once they moved here, there was never a moment where I felt like he didn't want me to be a part of whatever he was doing. He always included me. He was always very purposeful and intentional about reaching out to me. And even in my seasons of rest, where God literally told me, Sherrie, you have served yourself into a rut. You have served yourself into complacency. You have served yourself into this funk that you can't get out of. And I stepped away from ministry for many years. It was about 3 or 4 years, which for someone who grew up in church, that was a big deal. I felt lost. It's probably the feeling of loss that you would get, like just being thrown into like a wilderness, so to speak. I can imagine that that's how Jesus felt in the wilderness. It's just this lost feeling because I had always been serving. And in those 3 or 4 years, it's people like Pastor Courtney who were determined to keep me connected to my purpose and reminding me that what God created me for and the things that I was meant to do on this earth are not forgotten. And he purposefully and intentionally nurtured that in me. He fathered that in me. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I honestly felt like during that time of rest, like I honestly had kind of fallen out of love with music, if I'm being honest. I wasn't singing as much. I wasn't listening to things as much. I was still growing in other areas of my life that God had me focusing on in that season. But Pastor Courtney would always just out of the blue, or Mama Cornetta would always just out of the blue just call me or text me or just want to meet up with me. And they just keep reminding me, like, remember, like, you're in this season, but remember you're meant to do more. You're in this season, but remember you're meant to create. You're in this season, but remember you're meant to usher people into worship. You're in this season, but remember you are part of something bigger. And those are the words that always resonated with me, always stayed with me during that season. And coming out of it, being connected to something like the collective has been not just a resurrection, I feel like, for my purpose, but it has been a healing in ways that I didn't even know I needed to be healed. I had so much church hurt. I had so much disappointment in church as a whole, that it wasn't until I found this group of people that had walked through some of the same things I'd walked through, related to it in such a way that made me feel so comfortable and safe, that that's when the healing really began. And I can truly say that if it wasn't for this group, I probably would have walked away from my purpose and would have walked away from what I know is my ministry. So if it wasn't for this group always calling me back in, always reminding me, always showing me love in a way that I hadn't experienced in a long time, it just reminded me so much that no matter what you're going through, any wilderness, any season, God's love and God's purpose for your life is always drawing you closer to Him. It's always calling you. And yeah, that's that.